All right, so we're on lesson 12 now, and lesson 12 introduces you to the counter pattern. Now, we've been doing this for a while now, and but I want to show you about how this works. So, the counter pattern, what it's going to do is it's going to allow us to move um, really sprites around the screen in a nice, smooth way, and so it updates or changes the x or the y values, or really any variable value, by a certain increment each time. So, like for example, if we wanted to count from 1 to 10 by ones, we would go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. If we wanted to count from 1 to 10 by twos, we go 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on and so forth. And the counter pattern allows us to do that. So you can imagine if we have if you look at my little draw screen here, I have an x value of 32. If I wanted my object to move across the screen, I would have to change the x value and increase it, okay? So if I add 1 each time, my object is going to go across the screen. All right. Now, this draw loop doesn't do that. It just displays the counter, or this variable called counter. And inside of that variable, we are giving a value starting at 0. All right. So let's take a look at this draw loop. We first draw a new white background, so that's going to cover up whatever was drawn before. So it's going to appear like, we have this number that's changing by itself. We're saying the text size is going to be the size of the counter. So as this counter changes, the text size will also change. And the text is going to show the value that the counter is holding. Okay, now we're starting with the value of 0. Now every time we run the draw loop, we're going to change the value that the counter is holding. We're going to take whatever it was holding before. So the first time through it was 0. We're going to add 1 to it. So the first time this runs, it'll show the counter, and then it'll change it from 0 to 1. Then it'll run again, and it'll show the number 1, and then it'll update. We'll say counter that was holding 1, we'll add 1 to it, so it'll become 2, and so on and so forth. So this will start at 0, and then increase. All right, and you can see that's what I wrote here, a number counting up. So we got the number counting out, and the size goes up as well, because the text size is going to be the same as the counter number. So there you go. All right, number 2 is a video. Number 3 is where we get started on the skill building with the counter pattern. So I will start over here. All right, so using the counter pattern, you can write programs that animate sprites smoothly, like I said before. Adding to or removing from a sprite's X or Y property in the draw loop makes your sprite move just a bit each time it is redrawn. So do this. Read the code that makes the jet go up and down the screen. Add code that makes a plane move to the right, as in the sample image. So here's our sample image. We just want that plane to move to the right. So currently the fighter jet moves up and the plane doesn't do anything. And you can see in our draw loop, we have the jet.y equals jet.y minus 3. So there's our counter pattern, and you'll recognize the counter patterns as, something like a variable, like a .y or a .x equals .y or .x, and then we have a math symbol, either minus or plus usually, and then a number here. So this right here is a counter pattern. Now it's a minus counter pattern because remember, if we want something to move up the screen, we have to change the y value, and up is decreasing y. So the way we do that is use a minus sign. Now we have the plane that's moving from left to right, and so we need to increase the x. So our counter pattern is going to be plane.x equals plane.x plus 3 or plus 1. It doesn't really matter what the number is as long as it's positive. Now the way to do this with block is kind of annoying. So I'll show you how to do it with block first. So first we have to drag in this purple box, which is the equal sign. So that's the box that's in the back. Then we have to drag in a box that is the math sign plus. Now we can drag in our sprite x values. So there it is right there, sprite.x, sprite.x. We'll add a plus 3, and we'll change this from sprite.x to plane.x. All right, and you'll see that works. Okay, we got the fighter and the jet. That's kind of annoying to do, especially on an iPad. So my advice is learn how to type this stuff out and switch to show text. Okay, so I've got show text on, and what I'm going to do is right underneath this move plane over, I'm just going to type it in, plane.x equals plane.x plus 3. All right, and that's, to me, it's much faster than putting in the blocks, right? And here's the blocks. It'll automatically convert as long as you don't mistype anything. So that can be a lot faster, and it also allows you to copy and paste. So if you have multiple counter patterns and you want to reuse them, I mean, you can copy and paste them. All right, move on to part 4. Okay, so if adding to a sprite's x-coordinate makes it move to the right, how could you make it move to the left? Well, you just have to subtract from your x-coordinate. Okay, so we want to make it so that the fly moves to the left. All right? Move the fly bit to the left each time the loop is run. Okay, so again, I'm going to go to show text here. And we're just going to do fly.x equals fly.x minus 1. Okay, that's a counter pattern that will get the fly to move to the left. And I'll show you the blocks so you can see it a little bit easier. There's that counter pattern, fly.x equals fly.x. And we're doing minus 1 because the x value over on the right side of the screen is, you know, around 400. And we have to decrease it. And the minus operator decreases numbers. Okay, we'll finish. Move on. All right, so diagonal movement. All right, so we have a mouse here, and we're also introducing watchers. Now, watchers are sometimes a little difficult to see on the iPad, but they are down here in the bottom right-hand corner. And what they do is they give you the value of the x and the y as the program is running, so you can see how they're working. All right, so you know, read the code, run the program, add one or more line of code that makes the mouse move diagonally, run the code again, and look at the watchers. So the watchers are sometimes helpful to understand what's going wrong in a program. So here you can see that our mouse X value is not changing. And we want the mouse to go from this top left to the bottom right. And so at the top left, our Y or our X value is small. At the bottom right, our X value is large. So we want to add a counter pattern in that increases the X value of this sprite. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and do that. We'll do mouse.x equals mouse.x plus 2. All right. And that gives us x and y values that are both increasing, and the result is that this mouse moves from the upper left to the bottom right. Okay, now the challenge here is to change the rotation so it faces the direction that it's moving. We could also do that. We can set the rotation once. And rotation, mouse.rotation equals, let's see, that would be, so 0, maybe 45 degrees. Let's see if that does the trick. Nope, that's the wrong way. So we want to do the opposite of 45 degrees. Negative 45 degrees. How about that? Hey, there we go. So the mouse is now looking the direction it's traveling. Okay. All right, so that's my advice, is to start getting used to using the text instead of the block code here. Read the program and predict which of the following animations will be produced. In this case, I focus on the yellow car, okay? And so let's take a look at what that yellow car is doing down here in the draw loop. The yellow car is updating the y value, so it's going to be moving either up or down, and it's adding to the y value, which means it's going to move down. So we start with a low y value and we end with a high y value. So to pick the right option, we want to pick the one where the yellow car is moving down on the screen, which is C. Okay, let me run it. Yeah, it is. Okay. So move on. All right, so now we got a practice with 3 activities. Start with spinning here. And we have a pan that's not spinning. And remember, these little practice ones, they're supposed to be pretty quick. So if you're spending a lot of time on them, you're probably not doing it correctly. So we want to spin this pot around, and we are going to use the rotation pattern. So we've got our pan is our sprite, so I'll do pan.rotation equals pan dot rotation plus 1. All right. And there it is. Now, if you wanted to do it by blocks, you'd have to drag in the purple block first, then the plus block, then you put in the sprite.rotation into each one and add a 1, and then change it from sprite.rotation to pan.rotation. So again, I think typing it out is a little faster, but I'm pretty quick at typing. You might find the blocks are easier. So this is where a good example of the counter pattern comes in, and when you have some things that go wrong like this, like you want this motorcycle to go from the bottom left to the upper right, and you can see that there's a little bit of movement down in this bottom left-hand corner, but you're like, what the heck is going on? This is where the counter pattern or the watchers become useful, but only if you understand the X and Y coordinates. And so this is why I said at the beginning of this class, like if you don't understand coordinates, this class is going to get really tough. All right, but so first we want to make sure that we get a counter pattern for cycle.y. So I'm going to type in cycle.y and add that as a watcher, okay? Then I'll run it, and you'll see that this cycle.y is way too big. We want the cycle.y to get smaller to move to the top of the screen. Okay, so let's take a look. We can minimize our instructions here. Let's take a look at our y, and we can see that it's adding 10 when it should be subtracting 10. So in the show text, I can just change that from a plus to a minus. If I went with blocks, I'd have to drag in a whole bunch of new blocks. So my opinion, this is the much easier fix. All right, you can see that now our watchers, the y is decreasing, so that's what we wanted. All right, and rotation direction. This one gets a little bit more complicated, I guess, but it's pretty straightforward. We just want these gears to be rotating, and they're not. So we're going to add in some rotation blocks, and this is where copying and pasting is really useful. Okay, so here's my draw loop, and they're not rotating. The watchers aren't really useful here. So I'm going to go to show text. In the draw loop after the background, I'm going to do, red gear dot rotation equals red gear dot rotation plus 1. And now if I run this, that red gear is rotating, and that's great. That's exactly what I want. Now, if I did this with blocks, I'd have to drag in all those blocks again, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this, and I'm going to copy and paste it 3 times. Okay. All right, there we go. And now I'm just going to change this from red to blue. We'll do that here. And then from red to green. So we got all 3 gears. All right, now you might find that this is not as fast, but I found it to be pretty quick. Now there's one more thing I have to change. The red and the green gear are rotating the right way, but the blue gear is not. We just have to change this blue gear from a plus to a minus rotation to make it rotate the other way, and now it looks like it's doing the right thing. Okay, so let's move on to our assessment. Okay, so we have our fish animation here. Oh, and I already got some done here, so I'll start over. All right, let me get rid of my watchers. All 3 fish move as in the image to the right. The blue fish should move to the fastest, and the green fish should move the slowest. So I'm just going to give you some tips here. First of all, notice that every time this program is run, the fish get a random Y value. So every time you run this, the fish are going to start off in a different position. Okay, you notice that, how the fish are moving around? That's supposed to be there, so don't change that. Okay. Now, when you look down in your draw loop, you can see that our orange fish is getting a counter pattern. Okay, and it's the X value that is being changed. Not only that, it's a subtractive or a minus counter pattern, so we're counting down. All right. Now, to make the other fish move is pretty straightforward. It's just the same counter pattern. Now, we have the way this is working is the blue fish moves the fastest, the orange fish moves the second fastest, and the green fish moves the slowest. So you're going to have a different number for each one, but, you know, that's pretty straightforward too. Larger numbers make things move faster, okay? All right, so work on that. Good luck. Now, this last part here, sprite movement challenges, it's giving you the options to make your fish wiggle and add bubbles. All right, I'm not going to give away the assessment, so you can figure these out on your own. All right, and that is lesson 12.